I think from the first time that I did drugs, I got addicted to drugs because it was a comfort for me, and then it came as to be a comfort. It started being a hindrance because I had no means of getting it when I wanted it. So I started doing things that was not acceptable to get it. I would get high by any means necessary, and that took me to a lot of dark places. It started being normal, my drug addiction got normal. So I went to a program, and I found a lot of relief there because I seen other people like me, that was trying that had the same struggle as I did. Because for a long time I thought I was alone, but then I realized that I was not the only one, and that kind of made me feel like I belonged. I belonged there. I needed to be here. I stayed clean for 8 years, and my life was good. I was working. I had got my kids back. I got me an apartment. We don't get married, and that was a beautiful thing because she still loved me. It's all about today. But I know for a fact that I have more reasons to stay clean than I do to use. They're putting that stuff in weed. They putting it in pills. They definitely in cocaine. I lost a few good friends of mine on fentanyl. My son, on the 28th of this month, he overdosed off of fentanyl. But they gave him the dark hand to bring him back. That scared the mess out of me. That's why when I was getting high, I called myself trying to deal with the same person that I trusted, which they don't give a about you. They really don't, but it's definitely real. And I choose to be sober today. I choose my sobriety because I'm gonna lose everything. And I have a beautiful wife of 30 years, and she deserved the best me. My grandson deserved the best me. And most important, I deserve the best me.
So really, mental health is so important when it comes to battling addiction. And addiction is a mental health issue. If you really think about that, some don't really see it that way. They look at addiction and tie it immediately to the behavior. Okay, addiction, that means that someone that is constantly using drugs or alcohol. But really, there is a foundation to that. There's a reason why that individual has gone to drugs or alcohol. There's something that they are either trying to escape, there's a way they're trying to feel. There is escapism in that. So addiction literally is a mental health, psychological issue. So you really can't separate them.
I was young and from a small town, so I hadn't seen a lot of people conquer their drug addiction. Ron was in recovery when I met him. It was cool to see someone working on the other side and not want that life anymore. What's your dad's name?
Daddy.
What's his name?
Ron.
Ron. He was fun. No rules, lots of treats, a little bit of TV, golfing.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Stuff like that was fun with him. Even though he would tell people to never be afraid to ask for help, after so many years of battling, I think he really never wanted to ask for help again. Probably how he found himself being alone and using again a decade later. It took 14 weeks to get his autopsy report. I prayed that he would have had an aneurysm, something that didn't make everyone else right. That wasn't drugs. It wasn't fentanyl. But then also part of me knew that it was, and I always knew it was an accident. I never thought that Ron died on purpose or took too many drugs. There's not a lot of sympathy and support when you have lost your co-parent to drugs or alcohol. People are like, they can be a little cold or a little closed-minded. People can think like, well, if he didn't do that, then he wouldn't have died. And while that might be true, I think, his intention was to get high, but not to die. Sadly, and admittedly, there's shame. You don't want anyone to think that they had a bad dad because he died of a drug overdose. I'm not a bad mom because I had kids with someone that died of a drug overdose. They're not less valuable kids because their dad died of a drug overdose. But does everyone think those things? Does everyone feel those things? Yes. Yes. I don't know what that person learned on their Tuesday night, on their April 8th. They could be having the absolute worst day of their life. And no one knows that about you. The only hope is love.
But a lot of what we're seeing is people just not, like people that are actively using that just, they don't know it's fentanyl. Or people are being poisoned. They don't know that there's anything related to opioids in whatever they have. That's what's referred to as poisoning. When you're ingesting something that you think has nothing to do with fentanyl or opioids, and turns out it was in the substance.
So Tristan was an amazing person. He was very smart, very smart. He was self-taught. He was an internet baby. Many kids make a mistake. What I try to say is you can go out there and make mistakes. That's human. That's life. Don't make this mistake. Times have changed. It's not don't do a drug because you're going to get addicted. You're going to cause problems. You're going to ruin your relationships. You're going to ruin your future. You're going to ruin your schooling. You're going to ruin everything. It's don't do drugs because you could die. You could literally die the first time you experiment.
It's a human issue. It's about connection. It's about the things that you can utilize to fortify you so that you're not seeking consolation and mood regulation alone in a room somewhere from a substance.
Grew up in Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, loved skateboarding, surfing, got into music at a very young age. Mid-90s, it was just like that was the culture, you know? And so I started smoking pot, but I was like, I'm never gonna drink. So it was like, I always noticed that pattern. Try to make someone else's addiction appear worse than mine so I could justify my using. And then after a while, it was like there was no boundaries left to cross. The first time I used OxyContin, I was around 17, probably 16, 17. It just overtook us all. Play music, party all the time, and it was like everyone was hooked on opiates.
And I just fell to the ground, and and it just hit me, and I was just like, oh my gosh, my best friend isn't here anymore.
That was my first like smack in the face. Like, no, this is not. There's so much more to this. We had to learn that way. Denny was the first person I'd ever heard of getting clean. And he was as bad as I was. And that's what provides the hope. Seeing that was just like so inspirational for me.
I'm out one night, everybody's raging, it's loud, I'm in a bar. He calls me and said, I wrote a song for you. Everything just stopped, and I was like, what am I doing? This person loves me and cares for me enough that he is writing a song for me. So I literally just left. I was like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm leaving. And I went home and he played me the song over the phone. And that moment helped me get clean.
And I had a heart for coming back to help my community. So I was just like, if I come back and show people what has happened in my life, it could save a lot of my friends' lives.
It was really dark. It was really overwhelming. I didn't think we were gonna make it out of that.
I'm full-blown using again, but I had called everyone. I remember calling my band, I called Denny, I called my sponsor at the time. I was like, I have to change this. I was just like, I'm not losing her, I'm not losing my life, I'm gonna go out and die over this. I was like, I'm gonna fight just like I did before. And it seemed so minute at that point, like starting at day one again. But it was like, I don't care. I was like, I'm gonna fight for my life again. And when I was back out there in my relapse, when I was supposedly getting the heroin, I was told it was fentanyl, you know? And people are thinking that they're getting heroin when really fentanyl is overtaking everything. But there is a way out, you know, and there is hope. life is so much better without all that.
I would never say that anyone is hopeless. I don't really believe in that word. I know people sometimes can feel hopeless, but I don't believe that there are hopeless individuals out there. There's always a moment as long as they're alive.